Hi guys, we're here with Lena Nasserdeen.
Yeah.
Did I pronounce it?
You did. Good job.
Lena is the founder and CEO of Rise Up For You, and I would love to know more about that. Best-selling author. Oh, is it possible to have the books with me for a second in this scene, you guys? Can I bother you? I need to promote this.
In the bag, sir.
They're in the bag. Right there.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
That's very official.
Yeah. And there's another one, the number one. This is the newest. We're still live, it's okay.
It's a live show.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you, Catalina.
All
That's
right.
sweet.
So we're starting with Rise Up For You.
Yeah, thank you.
Yes. Can we hear a little bit about the book?
Yeah. So that book is actually the first book that I wrote. And it took me the longest, honestly, because it's a combination of like my story as to why I built my company and kind of landed into entrepreneurship, and a combination of empowerment, education, and then like strategy to take action. So I wanted to combine the both because they're both important. And I wrote the book really based out of my journey. And the book actually, it took a couple years to write, and it kind of followed me into different countries. Like I wrote part of it in Thailand. I wrote part of it in a Scandinavian trip when I was in like Norway. I wrote part of it in Lebanon. So it's kind of has a little bit pieces of me from everywhere.
That's awesome.
But it's a really, I would say it's a very empowering book. It's a very authentic book. Like I'm very truthful in the book, but it also gives practicality for people to take action. And it's really based on my story. And I can dive into my story if you want, or we can do that later. But yeah.
I would love to. Yes.
Yeah. So today I'm an entrepreneur. I run a company called Rise Up For You. Mm-hmm. And we work with organizations and leaders all over the world to help them be in the top 10% of what they do through soft skills. Nice. So soft skills are all the human skills that we never get taught. So the confidence, the ability to take action, how to influence, how to public speak, how to build relationships, active listening. It's all the human skills that make up 75% of our success that most people don't spend any time on. But before I started the company, I was actually a performer. So I used to tour internationally around the world as a singer and a dancer. Yeah, and I did musical theater. Mm-hmm.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and I remember when I first was a performer, I would walk into the room and there would be hundreds and hundreds of amazing singers. So I realized very quickly that I had to stand out in a different way because every person that stood up was amazing. So like, why were they going to choose me to be on a tour, right? Usually when they casted a tour, there was only 36 people, but there were hundreds of people in the room. And so I realized that I ended up being one of the best performers in the whole organization, but I was never, ever the best singer. There were always people that were more technically advanced than me. And people would come up to me when they would say, Netta, how do I stand where you stand? How do I get the solos that you get? And I used to say, everything you have is already inside of you. The only difference between you and I is that I show up in the room a certain way. I talk to the directors, I shake their hand, I read the room, I have self-confidence, and I utilize those strengths to help me stand out. Mm-hmm. Now, fast forward about 7 years, I become the executive of an education corporation because I realized through performing that I really just enjoyed empowering people. I loved helping people. I loved teaching and getting a message out there. And I was 27. I was an executive for an education corporation. I had about 200 team members under me, and I saw the exact same thing. So professionals that had PhDs, master's degrees, bachelors, all the certifications in the world, they were super, super smart, really struggled with success, right? Personally and professionally. So even though they had all of this knowledge, that knowledge wasn't serving them because their mindset was sabotaging them. They had a hard time building connections. They had a hard time managing their emotions. They had a hard time leading, negotiating, like you name it, they were really struggling. And most of the workforce was miserable, right? And even today in North America, 76% of individuals are not happy in what they're doing and what their job is, right? Like they're barely surviving. And so that's really where my journey started, where I started to recognize the gap in our society and how come some people are more successful than others. If I have two people that are in front of me and they have the exact same degree, who am I going to choose and why, right? If they have the same resume and they have the same skill, who am I going to go with and what's going to be the differentiator? Same thing if you're in business or if you're an entrepreneur. If I have two individuals in front of me and I'm going to decide who I'm going to use for this service or this product, what's going to be the thing that helps them stand out beyond just the product or the technical skill itself? So that's where I started to really study, like, what does it mean to be successful? And I started to do some research, but I didn't do anything with it. And then about 4 years after being an executive, going on 5, I decided to resign from the company for an opportunity called love. So I moved out of the country. I know, right? I resigned from the company, sold all my stuff, and I moved out of the country. And within 4 weeks, on the first day of my honeymoon, my husband said he wanted a divorce. And I lost everything. So I went from a 6-figure executive to a house on the lake, luxury car, all this stuff, to $100 in my account. That's all I had. And I replaced myself as an executive. I moved everything. So I got back on a plane because I wasn't in America. And I remember just like crying, bawling. I felt like very embarrassed and ashamed. I'm an educated woman, and I'm sure anyone that's listening, and even you, Catalina, maybe you've had this moment where you're like, how does an educated woman end up in a situation like this, right? Yeah. So I remember being on the plane and I was just bawling and bawling and bawling. And my father died when I was 27, when I was young, before I became an executive. He didn't see that side of me. He's only ever known me as a performer. And he came to me on the plane in my dream and he said, Netta, everything you need is already inside of you. You just have to rise up for you. And that's the name of the company. So I came back to California and I didn't know what I was going to do. I was scared out of my mind, but whatever it was, I knew was rise up for you. That's all I knew. I was like, okay, rise up for you. So I thought, you know what, I'm going to build something, but I don't know anything about business. I don't know anything about entrepreneurship. I didn't even know what a podcast was at the time. I just knew that, like, okay, I'm going to bet on myself and just try to do something on my own. And I knew it was going to be called Rise Up For You. So I just started building Rise Up For You, and I just started with a little bit of content, interviewing people, talking to people. And 3 months later, my second parent, my mom, was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer out of nowhere. Never had cancer before in our family. So I built the company out of a hospital. I took showers at the 24-Hour Fitness. And I would go across the street back to the hospital, open up my laptop. How do you build a business? What's entrepreneurship? What do people need in the world? Who's Tony Robbins? And that's how the business started, and that's how the book started. And then 6 months later, she died. So by the time I was 31 years old, I had no money, broken heart. Both of my parents, who I loved, they were the most important people in my life, had passed away. And I just had the idea of Rise Up For You. That's all I had. And that is what got me to just keep going. I built the company. Today, we're in over 50 countries with our programming. Whoa. We work with everything from Fortune 5 companies, big tech, big pharma, to individual entrepreneurs and professionals. And I have an amazing team throughout North America. And the book is what came out of it. And that's really what the book is about. And strategies on how I did it.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Isn't it interesting how love at the time was like such a devastating moment, and thanks to that is how you actually did rise up.
Yeah, and I always say, just like, use your pain as fuel for growth. Like, what are you going to do with it? And now today, all these years later, I have an amazing company. We're growing, making an impact, and I'm engaged. I'm getting married, so it's all good, right? Yeah, like, good things will always come to those that just continue to move forward and use their pain to do something with it. Like, that's the thing that I promised myself when all of that happened, and I was sitting by myself after my mom passed away. I was like, okay, well, you have 2 choices. What are you going to do with it? Are you going to let all of this heartbreak and pain go to waste and just be mediocre? Or are you going to take all of this emotion and pour it into something that's actually going to create some kind of positive change, not only in myself, but also people around me? And that was a defining moment as a person, is like, well, which way am I going to go? And that's the decision that I made, was to move forward and to use it to drive something.
That's amazing. Very, very inspirational.
Thank you.
I love it. What about the emotional intelligence?
Yeah, so, it's funny because when I started building Rise Up For You, I didn't really understand, what am I what's the product, right? So then I went back to what I knew, which was performing, education. When I was in education, I was also a professor in the evening, executive by day, professor in the evening. And that's where all of these skills, remember I was telling you, like they didn't have the human skills, very educated people, but they didn't have the human skills. So after like maybe, I would say after about 1 or 2 years of doing Rise Up For You, I realized that, well, this is what Rise Up For You is. It's teaching the soft skills that no one teaches. One of the most critical soft skills that most people don't know about, or they've heard of it, but they don't really understand it, is emotional intelligence. And research shows that 75% of your success, 75%, okay, so that's like 3/4 of your life and your success is made up because of emotional intelligence. It's what helps you keep the job, grow in the job, get a promotion in the job, and build a life that's amazing, not only professionally, but personally. And most people don't have it, unfortunately, and it's continuing to decline, not only in America, but around the world. And so that's what our company does today, is we teach the soft skills, and we teach the 4 major ones. The first one is self-confidence. And this is a proprietary blueprint that we created from our research, is the 4 top ones. Self-confidence. The second one is emotional intelligence, which is the most in-depth. The third one is transformative leadership. And the fourth one is influential communication. So how you talk to people, public speaking, your presence, how you show up, your nonverbal cues, how you read a room, and how you adjust your energy. And so the second book also just became a #1 best-selling book, which I'm really, really proud of. And it's all on emotional and social intelligence. And that one is 85% pen to paper. Because the thing with soft skills, Catalina, and I'm sure you understand this, is like, you have to practice it. It's like going to the gym. You can't just sit and watch a class on mindset and then all of a sudden get rid of negative thoughts and be an amazing human. You really have to practice the strategies. So the emotional intelligence book is for entrepreneurs, leaders, anyone that, again, really wants to be at the top 10% of what they do. This is the game-changing skill that's going to help you stand out and do that.
That's I love that, because a lot of winners, if you look at all these, like the billionaires, right?
Yeah.
They all have internal locus of control.
Yes.
You're not going to see them, oh, it's because of so-and-so, that's why I didn't know. They don't have that victim mentality.
Yeah.
And I'm like, why don't people, like, how do you teach somebody to have the emotional intelligence?
Yeah, that's a great question, because a lot of times people think that you can't be taught it, right? So I'm sure you've heard, there's some philosophers out there and some leaders that say, for example, let's talk about confidence, because confidence is a soft skill. A lot of people are like, no, you're born with confidence, right? And other people say, no, you can build confidence, right? I'm in the middle. So I believe that you are born with confidence, but instantly the environment that you're born into, the parenting, the culture, the society that you're around, the family and friends, all of those things impact your self-confidence, right? So, and that's why as you get older, typically, if you have a baby or if you have children, they're really confident when they're young. They say whatever they want. They do whatever they want. They have no filter, right? They're the most honest when they're children, because they don't have things in their mind that say they can't do it. They just do it, right? And that's why parents have to watch children. Be like, oh, don't jump off the couch. You'll hurt yourself. Because they don't know. They're just going to do it. But it's not until they get older that they start to hinder themselves, and then they have limiting beliefs. And then there's all this baggage that gets put on them by other people. And that's what happens over time. Right? So then you almost have to relearn how to be confident, because you were taught not to be confident through all the experiences and people around you that projected their beliefs onto you. Same thing with emotional intelligence and all the soft skills. You can learn them, but it does take strategy, and it does take like self-awareness, the ability to learn how to manage your emotions, the ability to have the capacity to understand other people's emotions. All of these things have a strategy and a skill behind them, just like a hard skill, just like a technical skill, right? Just like when you go to school and you learn that 2 + 2 = 4, you can also learn that, ooh, when I feel something in my stomach because someone said something to me, I could recognize that's a trigger, and the next thing that's going to happen is a behavior that might not be great. So what can I do to intersect that behavior and manage my emotions? There's a skill to all of it.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
And you also said something, the greatest tragedy is wasted human potential.
Yeah.
And I know those two are connected.
Yeah.
In your view, what are the most common barriers that prevent individuals from realizing their full potential? And what actionable steps can be taken to overcome these barriers?
Yeah, so the number one challenge and problem that I see, and that's where the quote came from, is self-confidence. And that's a part of emotional intelligence. It's like a little pillar of it. Most individuals really, really struggle with feeling enough. Like, have you ever been in a situation, or, many of us know people, and maybe it's even ourselves, where we accomplish so much, we're doing all these amazing things, and then we get there and we're like, oh yeah, but I still don't feel like I'm successful. I still don't feel like I'm enough, even though you achieved what you wanted to achieve, right? So there's this mindset that we're not good enough. And
scarcity.
Yeah, it's a scarcity mindset, yeah, with ourselves, right? 83% of professionals say their number one challenge is self-confidence. So our company, Rise Up For You, every year we ask anywhere between 4,000 to 5,000 professionals. Not like 10, like 4,000 to 5,000 professionals.
Survey?
And we survey them, and 83% of them say their number one challenge is self-confidence. Now, this next statistic is going to blow your mind. Out of those people that we ask, 56% of them are upper leadership and C-suite executives. Right? And so this is a constant problem that we see. And that's why I say the greatest tragedy is wasted human potential, because when you don't have self-confidence, it impacts your ability to take action. It gets in between you and action. So like, let's pretend this is your mind, right? This is self-confidence, and this is the action that you take. When we struggle with feeling enough, when we struggle with imposter syndrome, when we struggle with perfectionist mindset, when we struggle with self-doubt, right? These are the confidence cousins. There's a big wall of resistance that comes down that stops us from like actually moving forward. So recently I just did a keynote, and it was for a ton of entrepreneurs. And I asked the audience, while I was talking about self-confidence, I said, how many of you are entrepreneurs? They all raised their hand naturally. And I said, and how many of you are doing video for your product or your service? One hand out of the whole entire room went up. One hand. Wow. Right? And I said, how many of you know that you need to be doing video because the world that we live in, right? Like, this is one of the new ways that you have to get out there and have exposure and presence, but you don't do it because you're afraid of what people are going to think. You record for hours and then you judge yourself and then you delete it. And like 90% of the hands went up and we're like, that's me, right? So that's just one small example of how self-confidence gets in the way of us taking action.
Yeah. That is you said it very well. A lot of people, and it's, how do you eliminate that? Like, say somebody has this impediment, like, I don't want to see myself on camera.
Yeah.
How can you convince them otherwise?
Yeah, that's a great question. So it's not easy. I don't believe in like cookie cutter, like, oh, it's going to happen overnight. It takes work. It takes hard, just like it took you 4 years to go to school and build a degree, or it took you however long to build marketing, or whatever it is that you're good at, just like that it took you time. It's the same thing when it comes to soft skills. But one quick strategy that I love to use that I think is really, really important is I first start by saying that having negative thoughts will always happen. So let's just like call it out. Right? So the goal is not to not ever have a negative thought. That's just not real, right? Even neuroscientists that study the brain, their research shows that we have 80% of our thoughts are negative, right? And we have anywhere between 6,000 to 12,000 thoughts a day. Some research suggests up to 70,000, right? So, and 80% of them are negative. It doesn't matter who you are. You could be Tony Robbins. You could be Oprah. It doesn't matter. So our goal is not to get rid of negative thoughts, right? I have negative thoughts all the time. The goal is to understand how to manage the thought so that it serves us versus sabotages us. And so many people struggle with grabbing a hold of the thought and managing it, and so it's constantly sabotaging them. So the first exercise that I always give people, which is a really hard exercise, it's called the 4 B's to reverse engineering. So it's really reverse engineering the thought that you have. Okay, so let's do this, right? So think of one thought, and those of you that are listening as well, think of one belief that you have that's getting in your way. One belief, one limiting belief. So you might think, well, I'm that person that's trying to do videos and I don't. That might be a limiting belief, right? Because I'm afraid people are going to judge me. We work with a lot of executives, and some of them have the belief that, people don't respect or listen to me because I'm older, or people don't listen to me because I'm younger, or people don't listen to me because I didn't have a 4-year university degree, right? So they have limiting beliefs, right? So we all have something. In fact, we all have a lot. So I want you to write down just one for now so you don't get overwhelmed. And then the second B, so that's the first one, is like identifying the belief. The second B is what's the backstory of the belief. Where did it come from? So remember earlier we were talking about, being a child, right? And you're just bouncing off the walls. You say you do whatever you want. And then it's not until you get a little bit older that society tells you, like, who do you think you are? Sit down. You don't get to do that. Or you're not good enough. Or you're too fat. Or you're too ugly. Or you're not supposed to be in this room. And then we become 20 and 30 and 40. And the next thing you know is that our identity is shaped by all of these limiting beliefs that were put onto us by other people that also had limiting beliefs. Right? They were put onto us by other people that also had poor self-confidence. And what do? We project our beliefs onto other people. We project them onto children, and then they take it and they grow up with it, and that becomes their identity. So we have to understand, where did that belief come from? Did it come from Bobby Jane, who bullied me when I was 9 years old and threw me in a trash can? I have clients that have that story. Did it come from, did it come from their parents? Did it come from their culture? Did it come from their first marriage where they were in an abusive relationship, and then from there on out they have a hard time being in a relationship because in their mind they just don't think they deserve it? So you have to understand, where does it come from? For some people, they instantly know, and for other people it could take them a week, it could take them a month to identify it. So that's number 2, is figuring out the backstory. Number 3, which I think is the most important, is the behavior. The third B is the behavior. What's the behavior that it's causing in you? Mm-hmm. Is it causing you to behave aggressively, right, and be mean to people? Is it causing you to behave passively? For example, we have some leaders that we work with where they won't raise their hand in a meeting even though they have a question, because they have a belief that people are going to think they're stupid. And so that the behavior is that they don't take action, right? The behavior is that they just sit there passively and they don't raise the hand. So what is the behavior that's coming out of it? Is the behavior procrastination? Is the behavior drinking? Is whatever it is, you have to identify what is it causing you to do in your life, okay?
Or not do.
Or not do, exactly. Which is also behavior, right? It goes either way. And then the fourth B is, how do we now break the limiting belief so that we could shift the behavior to serve us? Mm. And that's different for everybody. For some people, when they go through the exercise and they realize that it was their 8th grade teacher, and they have this epiphany of, okay, for 20 years, my 8th grade teacher has been holding me back. That in itself is powerful for them. So then they start to shift the belief, right? Because they realize, I don't want my 8th grade teacher to prevent me from getting a job promotion. Yeah. You know what I mean? For some people, it's that simple. For other people, it takes a little bit more time. It might take therapy depending on how deep-rooted the belief is, right? If there's trauma behind it. Mm-hmm. It might take, creating a new surrounding of people that uplift you, that get you to start believing and thinking that I am good enough. So there's different things that you can do to break it.
Wow. I love that exercise. That's really, really neat.
Yeah.
Wow. And on overcoming obstacles, another question.
Yeah. Can
you share a fundamental moment in your career or personal life, and where emotional resilience played a key role in overcoming a challenge, and what did that teach you about the power of mindset?
Yeah, I think I'm going to go back to what we opened with the story of going through all that.
My goodness.
That trauma and that challenge. But what I will tell you is, everything that the company and I do, and everything that's in the books, I've used myself. Mm-hmm. I've used myself, and we've used with clients all over the world. Everything that I've written about, I used when I had nothing. It's again, no money, heartbroken. If you look at all the pillars of life that kind of lift you up, there's no money, heartbroken. I was stressed out. My health was suffering, right? Both of my parents passed away. Like my environment was crumbling. And because of the ability to have that emotional intelligence and that self-confidence, I was able to recognize in even the darkest moment that this is not my identity and that this doesn't define me. And I was able to realize that I'm enough and I have what it takes to get back up. And that is really, really powerful for anyone. And I believe that anyone has the ability to do that. But that's why I say that the greatest tragedy is wasted human potential. Because most people don't think they have the ability, even though they do in the inside. But that was the most pivotal moment for me. That was the darkest time I've ever been in. And I was able to build something out of it with zero technical skill. Right? I built a business and I don't have a business degree. I didn't know anything about entrepreneurship, didn't know what a podcast was. And I built it because of the emotional intelligence, the resiliency, and the soft skills that we're talking about.
Oh my goodness, I love it. This is going to be a very good reel. It's going to be like my favorite. I want to see, I'm going to go into like more fun
let's
questions.
talk fun.
One is, what are your thoughts on the DEI agenda?
That's not fun. I'm gonna get in trouble here. Okay, that's a really, really good question. So what are my thoughts on DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion? I think that unfortunately it has gone in the wrong direction. We do teach DEI at the company, but we teach it in a very inclusive way, and it hasn't been done in an inclusive way. The goal is not to go into an organization and teach diversity, equity, and inclusion while excluding another category, which is typically white men, for example, right, or Caucasian individuals. That's not actually diversity, equity, and inclusion. We're creating division. And so I think it's really important that if we are going to talk about diversity, equity, inclusion, that it really is inclusive and that we come from a place of education, acceptance, and tolerance all around in every single area. Because just like, okay, I'm an Arab woman, right? Okay, I'm an Arab woman. Well, I have challenges. And then my counterpart, who might be a white man, also has challenges, especially today because the narrative has changed so much. So I do think that it has gone in the wrong direction. I don't think the initial intent of it is wrong, but I think that just like it always happens in society, media gets a hold of it, politicians get a hold of it, people get a hold of it, and they completely change the original intent, and it becomes something that wasn't supposed to happen.
It literally became, didn't earn it.
Yeah.
DEI.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
And it's like, and I think that, I'm going to be very honest in saying this. Like, let's talk about women, for example. I 100% believe that there are some challenges that women go through and that have gone through because they've been women. I believe that, right? And I also believe that a lot of the challenges that happen today in today's world are because of the mindset that we project about being a woman. I'm an Arab woman. I've always been an Arab woman my entire life. And I have never, ever had any kind of harassment, any problems. I've never had a man put me down. I've never suffered in my career. The only time I ever had a challenge in my life was by another woman who was my leader, who was threatened by me, who pushed me down, who called me names, who said all kinds of things that she should have been fired for.
Oh yeah, I can sympathize there. I think most of the strong ones, probably you too. Yeah, I'm sure you do too.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's very sad though.
Yeah.
Wonder why? Why is that with women?
Well, and it goes back to like not taking away from all the suffrage that did happen, right? There's a lot that happened 100 years ago. 100 years ago, women really suffered, right? It's only 100 years ago that we didn't really have the right to vote, and I don't ever want to take away from those challenges that did happen, right? But what's happened is that, again, those beliefs and that projection have continued to be passed down, and now we're in a new era, how many years later, and so many women still think that they need to fight for that one seat in the boardroom, even though that's not the story anymore, right? That's the belief. And again, I'm not saying that there still isn't challenges, because every company is different. Every company is made from different people. And so there are people that still look down on women. So I'm not generalizing here, but I do know that there are a lot of challenges that women put themselves through because they walk into a room, they see that they're the only woman, and then they automatically project, like, I'm not going to get this job, right? Or they go into an organization and they see that, hey, I'm the only executive that's a female, and then there's this other woman that's crushing it. Oh no, like, well, there can't be two of us, right? And then they push that woman down. I mean, I will tell you, my team and I have worked with a lot of women. We work with men and women. But the reoccurring theme we continue to hear with women that struggle with self-confidence in the workplace is because of women. And they're afraid to say it because they don't want to feel like they're pushing down on women.
Yeah.
But that's their challenge, is that there's other women that kind of like give them the elbow because they're living in a scarcity mindset that there's not enough room at the table.
Wow. But also that kind of, same with African Americans.
Yeah.
There's that mentality, the victim mentality, maybe that, back in the 60s being, but they've gone through so much stuff, so I get it. But it's still like it's still happening. Like, oh, I can't get it because, I'm black, they might not give it to me. No.
Yeah, and I think, again, it's I don't want to take away from the whole cause, because there are instances where it does happen. And I know people that have gone through it, right? I've known people that are African American. I've known people that are Arab American, Middle Eastern. I know people that are Israeli. I know people that are Hispanic, that are Asian American, that have all gone through things because their leader or the institute that they worked for, like whoever was hiring or whoever was at the top, had these beliefs, right? Because we all have unconscious bias. But I would say that in today's world, there's so many ways to take opportunity and to move forward. I would say in most situations, not all, but in most situations, like, it's what's happening up here that gets in the way of us moving forward and really having like equitable opportunity.
Amen. Love that. I have some questions from my social media friends.
Okay.
That I want to ask.
Is it fun?
Yes, they're fun. Unlike my questions, these ones are actually more digestible.
Okay.
This is from Samantha.
Okay.
You met her.
I did. Hi, Samantha.
Yes. And she said, what inspires you to keep going on days you don't want to show up?
Yeah, I love that question. Honestly, the thing that inspires me to keep going on days where I don't want to show up is two things. One is the bigger impact, making an impact on people in the world. And that's why, like, your emotions are important, but don't always follow your emotions, right? Layla Hermosi says this all the time. I'm a big fan of her. I'm a big fan of her. And she always talks about, it's like, it's not about your emotions. Like, have your feelings, feel your feelings, but don't always take action based off of your feeling. That's going to get you in trouble. And that's why emotional intelligence is so important. So there's moments where I wake up and I'm like, I don't want to do this today, but it's not about me. It's about the thousands and thousands of people that we're impacting every day. It's about the team that I have that's working with me, right? So it's being able to look beyond yourself in situations where you don't feel motivated. And the second thing that keeps me driving is my parents. My parents, my dad was an immigrant. He came to this country, third world country he came from, with $20 in his pocket. Him and my mom grinded their entire life to build an amazing life and to retire, and neither of them retired. They both died when they were 63 years old, and they struggled along the way. And so that's just a constant fire in me, is that, like, I don't want their hardship and everything that they did for my brothers and I to go to waste. It's like, no, Mom and Dad, like, we're doing it. You came to this country to have a family and to give us a good life, and that's what we're doing. Like, we're making something out of it.
Wow. Girl, you get me emotional with these stories.
I'm like all passionate. Wow. I'm sweating.
Yes. Wow. Another one from Lucas. If I gave you $60 million to change your religion, would you do it?
No. I'm very, very strong on my values. That's the beautiful thing about having self-confidence. Self-confidence sometimes gets a bad rap. Sometimes, people think that self-confidence is bad if you have too much. That doesn't exist. When you have real self-confidence, you're humble, you're kind, you're loving, you're clear, and you know who you are. I'm very, very strong on my values and who I am and what I stand for in this world and what I stand for in my life, and no amount of money will change that. My top 3 values and priorities in life are God, my faith, that'll never change, myself, my health and fitness, my mind, body, and soul, otherwise I can't serve, and number 3 is my family.
Nice. What is the faith? Christian Orthodox or?
No, that's a great question. I was born into a beautiful faith called Druze, Druze.
Wow.
Yeah, Druze faith, Tawhid faith. It's a very, very small percentage in the world.
Small.
Yeah, it's a very small percentage. The majority of the Druze you're going to find in the Levant region of the Middle East. So Syria, Lebanon, Israel. You might find a few in Jordan and Egypt and whatnot through migration, but for the most part, we're focused solely there. And that's the faith I was born in. I've studied other religions and I just like my faith. It works for me. I love it. No one forces me to be Druze, but it feels good for me. It feels right for me. And no amount of money will change that.
What is the difference between, just for whoever doesn't know?
Yeah.
Like maybe if you wanted to tell us a little bit about your religion.
So it's very complex, and anyone that's Druze that's watching is probably laughing because they're like, okay, how are you going to explain this? So our philosophy, the faith is very complex, and the faith is really, I would say there's two aspects to it. There's the faith and the religion itself, right, within our textbooks, our religious textbooks, and then there's also like a culture, like a tribe. We're considered a tribe. Mm-hmm. The faith is predominantly geared on what we call Tawhid, which is oneness with God. Okay, so it's a Unitarian faith, which is your relationship with the higher being. Okay, and that's really what the faith is established on, is the continuous evolution of you being one with God and the various ways that we can do that. And through constantly evolving yourself, very important values are truth, always telling the truth, knowledge, like constantly the pursuit of knowledge is a huge value for our faith, is very, very important. So these are just some of the things. One of the challenges of our faith is that it's written in very, very old Arabic called the Tawal Hikmi. And so it's hard for a lot of people to like open it up and read it. It's usually what we call the sheikh or the sheikha that's reading the text in Arabic. And so some of our knowledge is passed down through leaders that help us. So it's hard to explain, but it's a feeling in the inside. And it's hard for me to explain because I'm still growing and learning through it. And honestly, that's the essence of the faith, is that you're continuing to grow and evolve, and you believe in this, and you're continuing to learn about it and grow through it.
And are there like churches or what?
Good question. So we don't, again, so the core of the faith is your relationship with God.
So there's no...
No. So they have like, there's gatherings and there's meetings where, somebody will open the book and read and then you listen and you grow through it. But we don't have like set church where you go certain days of the week. We don't do that. Mm-hmm.
So I've studied world religions many years ago, and I remember studying about this religion, but I could never figure it out. I've never met a person.
Yes.
Yes. So that's very interesting. Wow, finally meeting someone.
Yes.
Also Baha'i.
Baha'i has
anybody.
Yes, Baha'i has similarities.
Yeah.
But Baha'i has similarities to the Druze faith. The Druze faith is a beautiful faith. We are very connected. We're very close.
Forgiveness is huge.
Forgiveness is huge. Brethren, like the basic foundations and the values are very similar to other religions and faith. I love it. It fits for me. I love the concept of like the constant pursuit of knowledge, growing yourself, being at one with God. All of those things feel very right for me. We do marry within the religion. It's part of the faith. Some people honor it and some people don't. For me, it's always been a very important thing. And so like I am getting married to a man of faith with me. So
he's also, you guys
he
have
is, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow, to find another person with that's impressive.
And that's why, I'm 41. Some people would say, especially in the Middle Eastern culture, that like, okay, that's kind of old for you to get married. But for me, again, going back to values, it was a value for me to marry a man of my faith. And that is not simple. So I had a lot of men that were interested in me that didn't have the same faith. And it's just a value for me that I wanted to marry somebody that was of my faith, that understood my faith. And so for a lot of years, I turned down a lot of men because I'm very clear on what I want. And I knew that God would provide, and he did. And a man showed up, and I love him. He loves me, and it feels great.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Yes, that's a blessing. It's a rare case. You're a rare case because usually to find someone with such a little tiny, that little tiny religion.
Yeah, I
And
mean,
in the States.
it's challenging for sure, but I think that if you want something and you believe in it, then you'll work hard to make that happen, right? So you have to surround yourself with people, of course, that are of the faith. You know, there's different family gatherings and stuff that I would go to that are of the faith. And it's not easy, but no relationship's easy. No. Right? I've also dated people when I was younger that were out of faith, and that was also really hard. So for me, it's like, if I'm going to do the hard, I want to do the hard with someone that has the same spirit and the same faith and the same religion and the same values, and that's okay.
Yeah.
Right? And everyone's different, but that was important for me.
That's amazing. That's because when you know what you want, you know what you're looking for.
Yeah.
That's when you get it. Another question from Elon. If I gave you $60 million, he said less than that, but I just want to...
You changed it? Okay.
Yes, I changed it to a little more because that's crazy. If I gave you $60 million to endorse a corrupt politician, would you do it?
No.
Even if you just have to say, he said, be a little more persistent on that. So, okay. Even if you have to just mention the name, say, hi guys, vote for Kamala.
If I don't believe in something, the money is irrelevant to me. It really is. Because money is a tool. And I think that's what a lot of people don't understand yet. Money is a tool to allow you to do certain things, but it's just a tool. So why am I going to sell my soul for a tool?
Right.
You know what I mean?
Then nobody's going to believe you anymore if you're just going to go there and...
Exactly. And money is so much, like, this life is more than just money. This life, it goes back to my values and it goes back to my faith of, like, what kind of person do I want to be and who am I? And then having non-negotiables around that, right? And money doesn't hold that much weight. Money gives the weight that you want to give it, right? So even if it's $60 million, it's like, that's irrelevant to me if I'm going to do something that doesn't feel good. I've turned down many clients that were six-figure clients. That's not 60 million, but that were six-figure clients. And I'm like, yeah, that's not going to work because they weren't kind. Maybe they stood for things that I thought were mean or that just didn't fit with me. And I'm like, yeah, I'm okay. Yeah, the money will come. Money will come. Greatness will come. Love will come. Everything will come. You don't need to sell your soul. You just need to be patient.
Yes, and God will provide.
God will provide, always.
Nice. Now we're playing a game.
Okay.
It's called Rapid Fire Round.
Okay.
So you would have to answer as quickly as possible.
Okay. As quickly as possible. Okay, let's do this. I'm so excited.
Yeah, oh, nice. All right. So, early bird or night owl?
Early bird for sure.
The one trait every leader should have?
Emotional intelligence.
What's one book that has significantly influenced your leadership style?
A New Earth, Eckhart Tolle.
What's the most challenging aspect of being a CEO?
Leading people and managing your emotions when they don't move at the pace that you want them to move at.
Very nice. So be patient, like having patience?
Yeah, because usually when you're a CEO or the owner of a company, you're a high performer and you move at a certain pace, right? Like you drive differently. And not everybody on your team is like that, which is why maybe they're not the executive or the entrepreneur, right? Oh, yeah. And so it's recognizing that, like, everybody has their place in the company and they all move at a certain level. And so I have to remind myself of that.
Adapt.
Yeah.
What's something you believe every aspiring leader should quit doing?
That's a good question. Everyone that's aspiring leader should quit doing.
Yeah.
Breaking healthy boundaries that they have for themselves.
Wow.
A lot of leaders struggle with creating healthy boundaries. So they don't have the capacity to lead because they just keep saying yes to people please. You'd be surprised by how many leaders are people pleasers.
If you could have a 30-minute conversation with any historical figure, who would it be and why?
If I could have a conversation with any historical figure, this is going to be controversial, but I would have a conversation with Hitler because I would want to know why. I would want to know why all that destruction and all that hate and all of that stuff happened. Why did that happen? That's what I would want to know.
Well, in that case, if you could kill baby Hitler, if you had the opportunity to kill baby Hitler, would you do it? knowing what you know, if you could go back?
God, that's a hard question. Because for me, baby Hitler wasn't the Hitler that he became. His environment. And so that's why I would want to interview him, because I've been asked this question before. I would want to know, the path of what happened that got this human being to the place that they are today.
Supposedly he was a painter, and the critics at the time were Jewish, and they were
supposedly. I've heard that story as well.
They were hating on his art, and he just became very bitter toward their...
I've heard that story as well. I don't know how much validity there is to that. Right. But, just to go off topic a lot, but not a lot, I've also worked with a lot of murderers in jails. And I've had these conversations because we've taught soft skills for kids that are 12 to 18 that have committed murder, right? They're in jail for the rest of their life because they committed these crimes that they can't take back. And that's why I've always wanted to have that conversation with Hitlers, because I have worked with kids today where I'm like, how did you at 15 get to a point where you murdered another 15-year-old? What happened in the process where your mind became unconscious to the human condition? Because that's what happens when you have the Hitlers of the world, right? There's a light that turns off in that individual's mind where their consciousness and their ability to connect and to have empathy for human beings and the human condition, it turns off. It's like the soul shuts down, but they're still living in a human body and taking action. Something happens where there's a disconnection. And we're seeing it in today's world as well, even now, just not to that extremity. We're seeing people walking around that are completely unconscious to what's happening around them. And so then they're making decisions that aren't connected to human life, right?
Right. And what if Hitler told you, I did all that because Rothschild paid me to do it, so then Israel would become its own country? What would you do at that point? What would your answer be?
I mean, I don't think there'd be any answer. For me, it's just it's trying to just understand how somebody becomes what they become. And that for me has always, the bigger reason why I do Rise Up For You is because it's a deep, 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 deep passion for me to elevate the human condition. And this is just my way of doing it. My way of doing it is teaching soft skills because it helps human beings grab a hold of their emotions and their behaviors and their mindset so that they don't do things that destroy the world, even if it's in the workplace, right? Even if it's in their household. So for me, it's having conversations and understanding, like, what happened, why. Nothing justifies it. Nothing will ever justify. Whatever the answer is irrelevant, but it's just seeing what the answer is from that individual.
So you want to basically analyze him psychologically.
Yeah. I mean, I think we all do. I think that scientists do this, right? Think about this. We study the most successful people in the world, right? It's what we call performance psychology. And then we also study the most sick people in the world.
Serial killers.
That have done heinous crimes to understand, like, what makes the brain go either way. And then you have everybody else that's in the middle, right? So it's understanding, okay, I'm very fascinated with understanding what makes somebody super high performing, like what makes Jeff Bezos, right, and Elon Musk, and all the successful people today, how and what got them where. But then I also wonder the same thing on the very, very extreme side of things that created a lot of damage in the world.
Right. Yeah. If you could instantly acquire a new skill or talent, what would it be?
Marketing.
Okay.
I think that's a skill. Like, I see some of these people on like technology and like doing all these things, and I could learn it, like if I really like sat down and did it.
I can help you.
Right.
I can help with that.
I mean, I could learn it if I want. It's not my superpower. But if I could just like wake up tomorrow and be like an amazing marketing expert with Facebook ads and Instagram and all that stuff, I'd be like, let's do it.
Yeah. I could help with that. I just don't use it for me because I do it every day at my job, and I'm like, the hell with this. But definitely that would be, me and you could hang.
Yeah.
We can help each other out. What's one piece of advice you'd give your 20-year-old self?
I would tell myself to be empathetic towards others. Kind of what I said about being a CEO. It took me a long time to understand that people don't tick the same way. I've always been very driven. This isn't like a new thing. Even before I was an entrepreneur, I just had a thirst for life. When I was in high school, I was in all 3 choirs, right? I was in student council. I was varsity cheer captain, and I got straight A's. And I was 15, 16 years old, right? I just wanted to like do a lot and be involved, and I loved passion, I loved learning, and I didn't understand why other people weren't like that. And I was like that until I was probably like 20, honestly, until my dad died. I really struggled with empathy until my dad died. So I would tell my younger self, like, just be empathetic, because you don't know why people are the way they are and how they showed up. Now, that's not an excuse for poor behavior, but I had zero tolerance. Like, I didn't take any opportunity to care. I'm like, just get it together. Like, make it happen. Like, that was my mindset.
I think that's a lot of our mindsets.
Yeah.
We all have days like that still. Oh, goodness. Do traditional education systems sufficiently prepare individuals for leadership roles? Why or why not?
They do not. It's one of my missions. It's one of my missions to get the skills that we're talking about, emotional intelligence, leadership, self-confidence, in the school district. Because, and I've spent time in the school district, so I'm speaking from somebody that has been in the classroom. I'm not just like waving my wand and saying that this isn't working. I've been in it. The structure is broken. We have kids that are graduating from high school, that are graduating from college, and have no idea how to stand up and say their name. They don't know how to shake someone's hand. They don't know how to look somebody in the eye. They don't know how to motivate themselves. They struggle with depression and anxiety. They are lost when it comes to the traditional life skills and how to survive, just like on an emotional level. And it all starts in the school systems, and we are not teaching it.
Why do you think that is?
I think the system's broke. I think the system was built so many years ago for like the technical trade side of things. Like, you have to think back to when America was first established, right? And we needed tradesmen, and we needed manufacturing, and we needed people to
the rat race.
Yeah, to learn certain skills in order to like build the revolution and the industries that we have today in America. But the world has changed so much, and our educational institute has not changed with it, right? But you know what has changed is technology and artificial intelligence. So now you have an education system that hasn't changed, but then you've added all this technology, which, if not careful, can take away from the human skills. Now we have this massive gap when it comes to cognitive thinking and emotional and social intelligence amongst our kids. It's a huge gap, and it's getting wider and wider and wider because we have more AI and not enough like human intelligence happening.
It's scary.
It's scary. It's scary. And I'm excited about technology, and I'm excited about artificial intelligence, but I'm desperately trying to get people and school districts and government to understand you have to balance it. And if we don't start changing something in the school district, we're going to be in really big trouble in the next 10 to 15 years. We're going to see the impact for sure.
Yeah, for sure. I don't deny that. I think you're really spot on with that. Yeah. Individuals with high emotional intelligence have more internal locus of control. We already covered that. I'm going to go into another game, and it's called Would You Rather.
Okay, oh God.
We're still rolling, right?
I'm sweating here. Okay.
This question is actually pretty common sense, but because it's one of my social media friends, I'll still ask it. So, Lauren, would you rather have 5 million Instagram followers and only $500 to your name, or have $5 million in the bank and only 500 followers, social media followers?
Oh, 5 million in the bank.
Of course. To me, that was very rhetorical, of course, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, followers are... I have a lot of opinions on like social media following and that kind of thing. You know, there's a lot of people that are on social media that have an amazing followers, and they're bots. Lots, right? And they're doing really good business from it. And then you have people that have a lot of followers, and they're all bots, and nothing's happening from it. You have people that have very, very few followers that are real people, and they make a lot of money from it. So it could be very deceiving. And so for me, I'm gonna take $5 million.
a no-brainer.
I'll take $5 million.
Yeah, I'm surprised. Like people do actually think, with that $5 million, you can even
grow your following.
Yeah.
You can dump it into marketing. Yeah. So I would take the $5 million.
Yeah, I'm with you. Would you rather live in a utopian world with no freedom of choice, where all your needs are met but your life is completely planned out, or in a challenging and unequal world with complete freedom to carve your own path?
Freedom to carve your own path.
We come from a different world. Yeah, because I was born in Romania. I don't know if I told you that. And during communism times. So we know freedom, the importance of that.
Yeah, for
Lebanon
sure.
Too.
Yeah, and that's the human condition, right? It's like the human condition, it's not meant to be easy. If everything was easy, what would we be? We would all be the same. We would all think the same. We would all do the same. Yeah. But the whole point of the human condition is to have these ebbs and flows in life. I always say that life does not discriminate. It doesn't matter who you are. You could be man, woman, black, white. It doesn't matter. Everybody goes through life. It doesn't discriminate. You have death. You have heartbreak. You have sadness. You have happiness. And the test of life, I think, is to see what kind of person do you become through all those trials and tribulations.
Yeah. Yes. Life actually gives you the test and then it teaches you the lesson.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, would you rather have a highly successful career that impacts millions of lives but leaves you with no time for personal relationships, or have a modest job with ample time to nurture deep, meaningful connections with friends and family?
Does it have to be one or the other? I believe you can have it all. That's my answer. I believe you can have it all. You can have an amazing life and make an impact and do great things in the world, and have an amazing love life, and have an amazing family, and be healthy. I think you can have it all.
Could you?
I'm breaking the rule of the game. I'm sorry.
I love it. I think someone like you could have it all. Probably not for a very long time, but I think you can. For the most part.
I think you can. I would say right now I feel that. Is there more? For sure, 100%. But right now I feel healthy as a human, right? I have an amazing partner, my fiance that I'm going to marry. I have amazing family around me. I have an amazing business that's booming. I'm happy. Financially things are fruitful. Like, I believe you can have it all. Now, are there times where sometimes something will decrease a little bit? I'm sure. Yeah. Right? That's normal. Yeah. But I believe if you just keep working hard, that you can continue to nurture things simultaneously.
Mm-hmm. And you glow when you mention your partner, soon-to-be husband. Tell me a little bit about him.
He's a great guy. He's
look how she's glowing already.
He's the opposite of me, but he's not the opposite of me, if that makes sense. So we actually have a lot of similarities, just in different ways. He works for corporate. I'm an entrepreneur. So that's cool that there's some differences there. But we both have a growth mindset. So he's very curious about entrepreneurship. Like, everything that I do is very new for him. He's like, what is this world, right? But everything that he does is also very interesting for me. I'm like, oh, tell me about, like, when you go into work and you do, like, from his perspective. And he's in the technical space, meaning he does like mining and like engineering and like a lot of like tradesmen, like working with your hands and that kind of stuff, maintenance work, right? And so I love that we're different in that aspect, but the foundation of who we are is very similar. He's a very confident man. He's a very kind man. He has amazing energy, and he has a growth mindset, and that's really important for me. And so those are the things that attracted me to him: is his self-confidence, his energy. Like, if you met him, he lights up a room because he's just a kind soul. And that to me is really important, is like the heart of a man, but he's masculine, right? Like, that's a turn on, right? He's like super masculine. He's like 6'4", super tall, but he's kind. And so that to me is like, I love it. I'm not a bad boy girl. I'm not like, oh, I want the bad boy. I'm like, he's kind, loving heart, but he's confident, he's masculine, he's not a pushover, he's like a good balance. And I'm like, I'm very like smitten when I'm with him.
I can tell.
Hey babe, shout out.
I love it. I love seeing this kind of, this energy.
Yeah.
So masculine. Tell me a little bit about that, because I know it's not about, you don't have to be the gruff,
Sure, yeah.
the big long beard, any of that to be masculine.
Yeah.
In my opinion.
Yeah, it's just, I know he's masculine for me because he puts me in my feminine energy.
So you feel safe.
Yeah, and also like we all have both energies. Women have masculine and feminine energy, and men have masculine and feminine energy. And it's all about the yin and the yang of how you use it. So right now I'm more in a masculine energy, right? Like I'm in a business mode. We're having a conversation. I'm thinking more assertively. We're talking business. We're talking a little bit of a shop. When I run my business, I'm in more of a masculine energy. I'm in a competitive state. Like I want to grow and all these things. But I don't want to be that way with my lover, right? And so if my man is feminine and he has a lot of feminine energy, then it's only natural for the opposite person to be like, all right, well then I'm gonna take over, right? And I don't want that. And so because he has such a strong masculine energy, naturally when I'm with him, I go into a very like soft feminine energy, which feels very good for me. Like that's natural, right? So it feels safe because I have the business, I do that. And then out of the business, I'm like, I'm the princess that every woman wants to be, right? Like they want to be taken care of, right? There's chivalry that he brings to the table. He protects me. He brings all the things that I as a woman need, which is emotional safety, physical safety, right? Sexually, romantically, all those things that are important for me as a woman, he brings through his masculine energy. And that's important. Yeah.
That's important.
It is important.
Yes. I'm with you. Oh my gosh. Yes, and you actually described that very well, because I've had a few podcast episodes where I discussed this topic, this whole masculine versus feminine.
Yeah.
Last year, all I could see on social media were these reels where people were always mentioning, I'm in my feminine, I'm in my masculine. And that was a pet peeve of mine. I couldn't stand that. I would always, so I wanted to get to the bottom of it. And I did a few episodes. And I think you just quick, precise, and very well
It's
explained.
an energy, right? Yeah. And it's natural to like balance an energy. Yeah. So if a female is really masculine in her energy in a romantic relationship, oftentimes the male that brings that masculine energy doesn't know what to do. It's like, so then they either like fight and clash, or the masculine becomes emasculated. It's like, okay, this is weird. I'm going to go back, right?
And that's not comfortable.
Yeah, and so it's important to understand how to again use the yin and the yang, and how to use the energy so that they support one another and that they're cohesive.
Right. I do think that a woman that's masculine, that has that too much masculinity in a relationship, is probably because she doesn't feel safe. There's like, you're lacking, you're not really, the man is not providing enough reasons for her to be in her feminine. So she's just always trying to, I have a few friends that are they're very aggressive in their relationships, and they're always arguing, and there's that doubt. She's always wondering, like, where is he? Is he out there so...
Yeah, it's hard. I'm not an expert in it, so I can't speak from like a thought leader perspective, but just as a human, sometimes when there's an energy lacking, it creates like a frustration inside that boils over, and sometimes women can be overly assertive or really far into their masculine energy because they're trying to get it, right? And so, so just like you said, they're missing that energy. And then the true is also same for the opposite side of things. Sometimes, when men need that feminine energy and they're not getting the feminine energy, they're just getting a lot of masculine energy, then they can be like overly aggressive and masculine because they don't feel nurtured and loved from a romantic standpoint from their partner. And it just doesn't work. And the man becomes demasculated. I know a lot of men that have gotten a divorce, not because they wanted to, they really believe in the marriage and they believe in being with their partner, but the woman was so aggressive and so masculine that they couldn't recognize themselves as a man. They felt so demasculated that they're like, this doesn't feel good. This doesn't feel good that I'm like, that I have to like bow down and do all these, it doesn't feel good, for them energetically. And vice versa. And so that's why I just think there's no right or wrong, but you have to be conscious. You have to understand like what energetically is happening right now. And if you don't figure it out, then unfortunately I see a lot of divorce happens, a lot of things happen, and it's sad.
And emotional intelligence could help with that.
That's what it is.
You guys, you have an emotional, exactly.
That's what it is. It's what it is.
Because you get to pick on, okay, now I'm sensing some feminine energy. Maybe I need to...
I use the same thing at work. Masculine energy and feminine energy do the same. When I'm in a room full of other thought leaders, I'm doing the same thing. I'm like, okay, do I need my feminine energy right now? Because there's a bunch of people in here that are like, rah, and like screaming and like, or do I need to be more assertive right now and pull out my masculine energy because nothing's getting done and I need to take action? Mm-hmm. So I do the exact same thing. And it's all about that emotional intelligence of understanding what energy is going to serve the situation right now.
Coming full circle.
Yeah, full circle. And it's a skill.
Right.
I'm telling you, if you can master emotional intelligence the right way, don't just go watch a YouTube video, but really master it, you will be in the top 10% of what you do. You will be incredibly successful. You will build a life where you can have it all.
I do think a lot of people need that coach, a mentor.
They do.
Yeah, it's not an easy skill to acquire. So
yeah, if you don't have the skill, and if you're ever wondering how come I'm not more successful than I am, even though I should be, it's most probably because of the emotional intelligence. And everybody has something that they need support with. Like, I'm not going to go out there and get a confidence coach. That's not a skill that I need, right? Because I've crafted it, I've built it, I've studied it. But I would go get a marketing coach. Like, tell me how to, you see what I mean? Like, and I do, I have two coaches. I have a nutritional coach that just keeps me on par with things, right? Especially when I travel. And I have a business coach that's done 1,000 times more than my company, because that's a skill that I want to continue to grow. And there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, no, it's actually very good.
But a lot of times, especially with entrepreneurs, I see them get coaches for business, for marketing, for sales, but all that coaching goes to waste because they don't have the emotional and social intelligence, they don't have the soft skills, so then they don't take action. Right? Or they haven't developed the discipline or the motivation or the ability to speak and influence. So they have all of these skills around business, but their business isn't growing because they haven't utilized how to optimize the skill.
Yes, it is so true. Mm-hmm. Do we have time for another game? Is it? Because I do have another one that I want to.
Okay.
I'm holding you hostage here. It's called In Their Shoes. So, In Their Shoes.
Okay.
Scenario number 1, team member underperformance.
Okay.
So you're the leader of a project team, and one of your key members has been underperforming for the last few months. This team member was previously a strong contributor, but their recent work has been subpar, causing project delays and frustration among the team.
Okay.
You've heard rumors that the team member is going through some personal issues. Question for you. What steps would you take to address the situation with the underperforming team member, balancing the needs of the project with the well-being of the person?
So if I have a team member that was performing, but then suddenly there was a shift in behavior, the first thing I'm going to do is have a conscious conversation around it. And I think a lot of leaders miss that part. They just look at the behavior. The behavior is like, well, you're not performing anymore, right? But very few take the time to actually ask the question, why? What has happened that has shifted the behavior, and what can we do to support you? So the first thing I'll do is have a conscious conversation, see where that individual is, encourage a transparent conversation so that we can take a proper action. Now, that proper action might be, okay, let's put you maybe not as the lead of the project right now until you can pull yourself together through any challenges that you're having, and then we'll bring you back. That conversation might say, the team member might say, you know what, no, I can do this. Just give me a little more time, and then you support them. Some conversations might require you bring a coach in for them, or that you're coaching them, every now and then. So the first thing to do is just have the conversation to understand what the next action step is. I can't take an action without knowing the why first.
True. Yeah, I agree. I'm with you on that. You want to know the needs and...
Well, I always say that the best leaders in the world are the ones that ask questions first, and they ask a lot of questions, because there's too many times, and I see this all too often with leaders, is they take action based off of assumptions, and they take action without really understanding what the team member is going through, and then oftentimes it causes a lot more damage and a lot more harm. So the best leaders are the ones that are curious. They're curious. They want to know what's going on, right? Asking the question so that they can find the right answer and take the right action step.
Right. That is brilliant advice.
Yeah.
Scenario number 2, budget cuts and resource allocation. As the head of the department, you're faced with sudden and significant budget cuts. You need to decide how to relocate the limited resources, knowing that you must either cut a few people from your team or reduce the scope of your department's projects. Each decision carries significant consequences for team morale, future department success, and individual livelihoods.
Yeah.
Question: how would you approach the resource allocation to minimize the negative impact on the team and the department's objectives?
Honestly, I've been in a similar situation to this. I've been in a situation as a business owner where I've had to make cuts, and the first thing I do is start with myself first. It's like the last thing I want to do is start with the team. Right, the last thing I want to do is make my team suffer or to pull budget from the team and to bring down morale. In some cases, you have to do that. But in the few cases that I've been in, I'm like, okay, I'm not going to pay myself a salary for the next 2-3 months. And there's been times as a business owner where I've had to do that, where I've had to skip myself on payroll, and my accountant and my CPA are like, why are you not paying yourself? And I'm like, because I got to feed the team first. And right now we're low on budget, or we're low on cash flow, or that project that we thought was going to hit didn't hit. I'm not going to go cut my team's salary. The first thing I'm going to do is start with me. That's my job as the business owner, as the leader, is to take ownership and to try to provide strategy that can get us back on top. And thankfully, every time we've been able to do that.
Thank God. Yes. Wow. Ethical dilemma with high stakes.
Okay.
You're the CEO of a company that has discovered an internal issue in which a highly profitable product is not as environmentally friendly as advertised, contrary to the company's public commitment to sustainability. Fixing the problem would mean a costly recall and potentially significant financial losses. However, ignoring the issue could lead to reputational damage and long-term harm to the environment. Question: will you move forward with addressing the issues transparently and recall the product, or will you search for a less costly solution that involves keeping the issue confidential while you quietly work on a fix?
If I'm a CEO and we find that there's a significant problem within the company that's causing damage to society, environment, people, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how much money there is. I'm going to be transparent about the situation and try to solve it, because nothing is more important to me than being able to put my head on a pillow at night and have a clear conscience. That's why I'm able to sleep 9 hours a night.
9? That's why I look
9
so good.
hours without waking up, because having a clear conscience and doing the right thing is the best type of solace and peace you can provide for yourself. And I don't care what anybody says, when you're not truthful and when you're not transparent, it always comes back to haunt you. I don't know one situation. I mean, look at all of the companies that we see in the media. They try to hide things. It will always come out. It will always come out.
Big pharma.
Right? So the best thing to do is to get ahead of it, is to take ownership, to take accountability, to say, like, we've messed up here. We have a problem with our product. We have a product with our service. We're coming out. We're being transparent, and we're doing everything in our power to try to solve the issue.
I think I totally can see you be a politician one day.
Really?
The kind that we actually need. Yeah, I think you should.
You know, somebody asked me that once, if I would ever, and I don't know. I'm open to whatever the universe brings, whatever comes my way that makes sense, that fits. You know.
Yeah, I would probably, if I were you, I would go for. I don't know. Do you have any, are there any local charities, causes, anything that you're passionate about?
I'm passionate about education and youth. That's why when you ask the question about education, I'm on it, because I really do believe that education is so important, right?
Very vital.
And it's critical to the next generation. It's critical to the success of our country. It's critical to the success of humanity. And when we don't educate people and we don't provide them with the necessary tools and skills, we will see chaos. I mean, there's some areas in America where I think it's like Gotham City, right? And part of it is because we have not educated our society to be emotionally intelligent, to be self-confident. We've done a poor job with mental health. We've done a poor job teaching resilience. And I just think, and it's not against any of the educators and the teachers, because I know a lot of educators, it's a thankless job. Every day they're in the classroom, they're trying to work with these kids, they're raising kids, to tell you the truth. A lot of teachers are raising the kids because they come into the classroom with poor parenting, right? And so there's so much happening in the education system, and it's just broken. And we need people, we need thought leaders from not only this country, but from other countries to see, like, what do we have to do to get it right, to build a society of functioning civilians that are great citizens, that contribute to the world, that aren't tearing it down and tearing it apart.
An education reform.
Yeah. Can you tell, like, if you were to ask me, like, politically, where would I go? It's like all day, every day education.
Yeah, and you could be in charge of the education department.
You're already like planning my future.
Yes, I really could, like, I'm putting it into the universe. Or maybe you could start off as a mayor.
Maybe, like, whatever, you know.
Especially because Vegas, really, it's a shitty education system here. Like, we have terrible education.
There's some things that are broken here, and there's some things in Vegas that do really, really well here. So, for example, the private schools and the charter schools, we actually have one of the top private and charter schools in the nation.
Really?
Yeah. So there are some things that we are doing right here. And I would say even across the country in America, there's quite a few charter schools and private schools that they do. I mean, that's why they were created, right? Mm-hmm. They were created because the structure of the K through 12 system, it's very restricted and it's moving at a very slow pace. And so you have people that believe in educational reform that have an entrepreneurial spirit, that have said, well, I'm going to go build my own thing then. I'm going to go build a private school. I'm going to go build a charter school that's going to teach some of the skills that we're not able to break through in a traditional K through 12 system.
And if you were to go into my last question.
Yes.
If you were to go into politics, what would you be? Independent, Republican, Democrat, what would you be? Too soon?
No, my answer is it depends where the political party is at that time. Because for me, it's not about the name of the party, right? It's not independent, Republic, Democrat. It's what does the party stand for in that moment? And is that in alignment with me? Currently, right now, in this time period, I'm a Republican. Because not everything, but most of what the party stands for right now fits me, right? Most, not everything, but there's some things I don't agree with. But if you're talking about the majority, currently in this current moment, I'm a Republican. 8 years ago, I wasn't. Right. So if I ever were to go into politics, it would really depend where that party is in that moment, and from a value perspective, where does it make sense? Mm-hmm. I have no problem hopping back and forth. I have no problem. It's just where is the pulse of the party at the time, you know?
Right. And what do you actually, it depends on how you are at the time. Because I remember in my 20s, if I were to look back, I was anti-guns, and now I own guns. I was, so when you're in your 20s, most likely you're a Democrat.
Yeah.
Because you're a kid.
Yeah,
you don't know any better. And then, dang!
Yeah.
I just insulted
things
everybody.
change. Yeah.
But then you grow up and you're like, wait, these things don't add up.
Yeah, yeah.
So I don't know, do we change or do they change? I think it's a bit of both.
It's everything. I think the structure changes, people change, policies change, politics change. So, the Republican Party is not the same party that it was 10 years ago. The Democratic Party is not the same. The Independent Party is not the same, and so it's just, it's kind of understanding, like, where is it at what point, and does it make sense for you in that moment of your life?
Yeah. I agree. Is there any question I didn't ask that you wish I had asked?
I mean, we got through a lot. I feel like we changed the world in this podcast.
It's crazy because honestly, I skipped like 10 questions because I wanted to get to the games.
Yeah.
But
No, you. This is probably one of the best podcasts I've done because the questions that you asked were so different, and I like thinking off the top of my feet. I
Love it.
like getting questions that I have no idea what I'm going to say or what I'm going to do. And some people will like the answers and some people won't. And it doesn't matter. Like, I was authentic and, we had a great conversation. So
Yeah.
I appreciate the candor that we've had back and forth and the questions that you've asked. And, I think what we talked about is really important. I think the soft skills really is the core of a lot of the things that we talked about today.
Yeah. And education.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yes. So if you guys need a coach, here we have.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much for coming, my dear. And
Thank
we'll
you.
definitely keep in touch.
Thank you. Absolutely. I appreciate it. And anyone that's watching, if you want to learn more about emotional intelligence, go to our website. There's so much free stuff. I mean, you can take an emotional intelligence quiz. There's a master class. There's a self-confidence quiz. There's a confidence master class, and it's all completely free. You don't have to pay a dime. Wow. Just go to riseupforyou.com and you'll find it all there.
Riseupforyou.com. And your social handles?
My social media is at RiseUpForYou. Super simple. We're everywhere. LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube. And then you can also follow me personally. I manage my own social media, like my own personal name, at Lena Nasserdeen. I'm sure you'll put in the show notes because it's Middle Eastern, so it's quite long. And if you even just shoot me a message, I'm going to be the one answering on my personal page.
Nice.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Thank you so much.
Yeah, of course. Thank you. This was great. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Wow.